What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to our video today, continuing our 2019 draft prep as we take a look at my top 10 linebackers for the 2019 NFL draft. Now, you gotta remind yourself, this is pretty much for like 4-3 linebackers, 3-4 inside linebackers. We did edge rushers the other day, so just in case, get your mind right for what prospects we're gonna be talking about. This is a position that I have done a lot of work in, maybe as much as any other position, just because when my personal team, the Philadelphia Eagles, needs certain positions during the draft, I tend to spend a little bit more time on that than positions they clearly don't. But before we jump into my rankings 2.0, here were my honorable mentions. I originally only did a top 5 just because, there was a lot of top tier guys and I wasn't sure if they were going to declare or not. Like up until literally like the last week, we didn't know if Devin White, Mac Wilson, Devin Bush, Vosean Joseph, we didn't know if like a lot of the guys that would be in most people's consensus top 5 were even going to declare. So on my original list, my honorable mentions, I had Vosean Joseph, Devin Bush, and TJ Edwards. And then my top 5 were Anfernee Jennings at 5 from Alabama. Number 4 is Trey Lamar from Clemson. Number 3, Mac Wilson from Alabama. Number 2, Cam Smith from USC. And number 1, Devin White from LSU. That being said, let's jump into my linebacker rankings 2.0. And before we jump into the official top 10, let's take a look at the honorable mentions. I have 4 as usual. First up, we got Gary Johnson, linebacker from Texas. We also have Cam Smith from USC, Ben Burr-Kiven from Washington, and Trey Lamar from Clemson. All 4 of those guys excel in one thing or another, but I don't think they have as well-rounded of a game to crack the top 10. Still, starting with the honorable mentions, I think we're talking about guys that will be going in the 5th, 6th round. Probably, from honorable mention all the way down to maybe even 6. We're talking about guys that are going to be between rounds 4 and round 7, but I personally feel like rounds 4 to round 6. That being said, let's jump into number 10. And at number 10, we have GERMAINE PRATT, 6'3", 245 pounds, out of NC State in 2018 at 104 tackles, 10 TFLs, 6 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He is a very strong run defender, understands coverages, and is a surprisingly big hitter for a guy that was a converted safety. Now, we know safeties can hit, but usually when they make that transition to linebacker, they are on the smaller side of things and excel more in coverage and aren't nearly as good in run defense. But that is kind of the exact opposite for GERMAINE PRATT. The negatives are he is a converted safety, so he still is learning how to get off blocks like a natural linebacker. And I do think because of his size, I mean, out of some of the guys, there's a bunch of guys on this list that have played a little bit of safety and have transitioned. That's just the way that football is going nowadays. You need that coverage ability more and more. In the National Football League and obviously in the college game, but you can usually tell when a guy is a converted safety. GERMAINE PRATT, I did not know. I was like looking at him, he's pretty big, he's pretty bulky, and he's not really amazing in coverage. So I was a little bit surprised there. For a guy like him, though, his combine will be big. I want to see how well he tested the combine. Can he show some of that athleticism that used to make him a DB, or did he bulk up too much and now he's just your traditional linebacker? But because combine will be fairly important to his stock, I kind of have to hold that against him as a negative. Going to linebacker number 9, we have Tevon Coney, 6 feet tall, 240 pounds, out of Notre Dame. In 2018, he had 123 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and a interception. Positives is that he is a very strong in-the-box linebacker, very strong run defender, has some upside as a blitzer, can get off blocks. Maybe not as consistent as I was like, but that's his strengths. His negatives is I think he is a limited athlete, and he does glaringly struggle in coverage more so than a lot of other linebackers. And because of that, kind of gonna get pigeonholed just a little bit as a early down linebacker, and you're not gonna want him on the field in 3rd downs. And when that happens, usually not gonna get a big time draft pick coming your way. So unless he surprises everybody at the combine, I think Tevon Coney does have a role in the National Football League as a special teamer and early down linebacker, but those guys aren't going to go until, like the 5th, 6th round. Going to linebacker number 8, we have Joe Giles Harris, 6'2", 240 pounds, out of Duke. In 2018, he had 81 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and a sack. He pretty much is your prototypical 2018 NFL linebacker. Sideline to sideline, has some pretty good coverage stats. He's well-rounded, really good tackler, didn't miss a whole lot in college. The only negative for him is really the combine will be massive. If he has a really, really strong combine, which he could definitely have a chance at potentially, sniffing that top 5 ranking. But if his combine, if his average, just simply average, he's your, early day 3 type pick at linebacker. And when you look at his tape, it's one of those guys, man, linebacker, defenders in general are really, really tough. Because obviously when you're a wide receiver or a running back, you could see the athletic ability pop right away. I find with linebackers especially, and maybe safeties to a degree. It's tough to say, man. It's tough to say. So for a lot of these linebackers, a combine will be big to kind of give everyone a gauge of their true athletic talent, and Joe Giles Harris is definitely in that mix. Going to linebacker number 7, we have TERRILL Hanks, 6'2", 235, out of New Mexico State. In 2018, he had 101 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, a sack, a pick, and a interception. He's a converted safety, so his coverage ability and sideline speed is very good. He actually think I had him mocked to my Philadelphia Eagles in the second mock draft that unfortunately YouTube took down. God damn it. I'm not going to go into that, but I think Hanks, he's very intriguing, man. He's very, very intriguing. Has really, really long arms. I know a lot of people in the scouting community are comparing his body type anyways to a Darius Leonard. And while he doesn't have the same type of game that Darius Leonard had, who is obviously your reigning defending rookie of the year, I think a guy with that body type that's more athletic than Darius Leonard is still going to be incredibly intriguing, understanding that Darius Leonard went in the second round. I think a guy like TERRILL Hanks is going to be 4th, 5th round, somewhere in that range. And you say, why is he going there? But just because obviously size concerns, he's still, anytime we talk about a prototypical linebacker, you're always going to have those size concerns, because until they can prove that their size is not an issue at the next level, which we can see some players like Telvin Smith, Miles Jack, like these guys that are 6 feet tall, 230, 240, somewhere in that range, they can make it work. But then for every one of those guys, there's linebackers that are that size that don't work out. So Hanks, you know, there are those size concerns. He's still in the linebacker position too, as a converted safety, still learning how to get off blocks and all those linebacker techniques. So because of that, he does have a very high upside, but not as complete of a player as pretty much everyone else from 6 up to 1. I'm still big fan of TERRILL Hanks. I think he's going to be a sleeper in this draft. Going to linebacker number 6, we have TJ Edwards, 6'1", 250 pounds, out of Wisconsin. In 2018, he had 112 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 3 interceptions. Another player like TERRILL Hanks that I'm higher on than most. I think TJ Edwards is going to be very, very good in the National Football League. He's well-rounded. He's very good in run defense. He get off pass blocks. He's really good in pass defense. I don't know, it seems like every year he has at least 2 or 3 minimum turnovers. Gets a lot of pass deflections. He's a very high football IQ. I think the only reason why people are kind of having him really low on their list, or not even on their top 10 list at all, is because there appears to be some athletic limitations. I think he's not a bad athlete. The combine will be big. I mean, I don't want to be redundant with that negative, but it is for a lot of these linebackers. But you can clearly see, because of that high football IQ, he puts himself in the right position more than it's his, you know, elite sideline to sideline ability, or his elite burst that's having him get these turnovers, these interceptions, these pass breakups. So he has a very high football IQ, and a lot of times when we talk about a guy with a high football IQ, they just don't value that as much as they used to in today's NFL. So unfortunately for a guy like TJ Edwards, I would probably say, because I'm higher on most, I'd probably put a 3rd round grade on him, but I could definitely see him going somewhere between round 4 and 5 after he probably will post an average combine. Going to number 5, we have Vosean Joseph, 6'1", 225 pounds, out of Florida. In 2018, he had 93 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 5 pass breakups. Now, as a Gator fan, I was kind of disappointed that he declared, because I wanted him to come back for another year. But then when he did officially declare, it was time for me to say, this guy is what they're looking for in the National Football League. It makes sense why he wants to declare now while that stock is high. He is a big hitter. He is a 2018 NFL prototypical linebacker. You know, a guy that excels more so in coverage than what we've seen in linebackers in the years past, like a Ray Lewis type. But he has that 90s mentality. He is an absolute pit bull in the middle of the field. He's very, very aggressive. I think he's going to be a good athlete. He should test fairly well at the combine, obviously, because hell, there's some safeties in the National Football League that are bigger than Vosean Joseph. Look at the negatives. He does have size limitations at 6'1", 225, and he can be overly aggressive at times. He can just bite on a play and get way out of position and kind of hold the defense accountable for his missteps. But it doesn't happen a lot, which, you know, and luckily enough, if he does get overly aggressive, he usually has that athletic ability to come back and make a play. For a pro comparison for Vosean Joseph, I'm going to go Kiko Alonso. Kiko Alonso is a little bit bigger, but they have very similar traits, what they're good at technically. You know, both these guys can play coverage a little bit, can get overly aggressive. That's kind of been one of the bigger negatives for Kiko Alonso. But they're also very, very aggressive. Kiko Alonso is definitely, you know, he might have now, after the last couple of years with Miami, getting known as a dirty player, but they're both very aggressive, I think, if you're putting it in a PC light. And I think from that standpoint, Vosean Joseph and Kiko Alonso's game are eerily similar. Going to linebacker number 4, we have Dakota Allen, 6'1", 235 pounds, out of Texas Tech. In 2018, he had 61 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, and a touchdown. We look at Dakota Allen. He is a great athlete, one of the better cover linebackers in this year's draft. And when he has a free run, he is an effective blitzer. He has a very IQ, won't get bit by any of these razzle dazzle, if you call it, from quarterbacks. If he gets a free shot, he is going to hit that quarterback and bring him down. But obviously doesn't get the sacks a whole lot of time, just a lot of QB pressures and stuff like that. I would say the negatives is kind of comes off of that. I think when he gets onto a block, if they do bring him on a blitz, because of the size, 6'1", 235, again, beating a drum, there's going to be limitations. There's going to be limitations when you come to the National Football League, when you're that kind of, you're a type of linebacker. He's not a complete linebacker. I don't really think there is a complete linebacker in this year's draft class. Maybe the guy we have at number 1. And even that, it's still stretching it just a little bit. But I think from a sideline-to-sideline standpoint, being able to cover tight ends, being able to cover running backs, being able to, get a little bit of a press on the line of scrimmage against some slot guys, I think Dakota Allen is what you're looking for. You also have some of the off-the-field concerns, I guess, for Dakota Allen. He was most notably known for his time at Last Chance U, because he get kicked off of Texas Tech for like a robbery or something like that. But he does seem like he has turned everything around. So for that, I don't know how much they're really going to hold against it. I think we more so about his size and how he can affect the pass as a rusher. That could hold him back just slightly. As a pro comparison, I kind of said Wesley Woodyard, who formerly had the Denver Broncos, now the Tennessee Titans. Just a really good sideline-to-sideline linebacker that can and effectively play coverage. Maybe not an elite level, but definitely enough so that he can stay on the field for all 3 downs. Now for Dakota Allen and Voshon Joseph, I'm probably saying guys that they're going to be going probably the 3rd round, 3rd, 4th round. In that range, just because they're not a complete linebacker yet, but they are kind of what you're still looking for in today's National Football League, so they should get drafted higher than most. Going to linebacker number 3, we have Devin Bush, 5'11", 225 pounds, out of Michigan. In 2018, he had 66 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 4 pass breakups. When you look at Devin Bush, good athlete. There's no really glaring weaknesses from a technical standpoint. He can drop back into coverage. He can rush the passer when you want him to. He can, hold off and diagnose plays when it's something tricky, when it's a play action RPO. And I do think there's a lot of upside there. I do think when you look at his athletic traits, he's only going to get better. He's not going to get worse. But when you look at the negatives, he is 5'11", 225, so there are some size limitations. He's inconsistent in coverage at times. Sometimes you will see the athletic ability there, and he might have a little bit of a brain fart. I was very close to putting football IQ as a plus, but in the 3 full game breakdowns that I watched of him, you would see sometimes where it's like, all right, look, he's clearly going to be going up against the running back here, and then he'll like maybe get his eyes caught in the backfield or something like that, and the running back can get past him. So, I think if he can get that shored up, which he can, obviously, that's definitely a part of the upside, getting more consistent in coverage. I think Devin Bush is going to kind of blow all those size limitations out of the water with his on-field ability. Pro comparison for me, I do think he's a little bit more athletic version of a Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks for the Minnesota Vikings. Good middle linebacker. Good starting middle linebacker. Don't have to worry about it. He's, a plug-and-play type player. I have seen Devin Bush go in the 1st round in some mock drafts. He could. I mean, looking at the end of the 1st round, like I said, I've commonly had him going to the Rams. But I do think ultimately, if I was putting a grade I'd feel comfortable on, I would say 2nd, 3rd round. But I think because of the ability and because of the need at linebacker, wouldn't be surprised at all if he can creep into the 1st round, especially if he tests very well at the combine. Going to linebacker number 2, we have Mack Wilson, 6'1", 235 pounds, out of Alabama. In 2018, he had 65 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, a sack, 2 interceptions, and 5 pass breakups. The positives for Mack Wilson is he is the best cover linebacker in the class. From a sideline-to-sideline ability, he is very, very high, but I think kind of like TJ Edwards that we talked about, I think it's more so his football IQ. He's in the right place at the right time. Not so sure it's his athletic ability, because that's pretty much the glaring negative for Mack Wilson for me. Is a lot of people don't think he's going to test well at the combine. When you watch him play, you could see, he could have like 4.7 speed. That's kind of what the rumor is right now. That's not going to be good for his draft stock. But when you see just how smart he is, for a guy that hasn't played a whole lot of football at Alabama, he's been a starter for only, 2 years, year and a half, somewhere like that. He has that pedigree, that Alabama linebacker pedigree. He knows what to do. He knows how to be in the right place at the right time, and teams will value that. And if he can even just have a all-right combine, that is going to firmly submit him as the number 2 linebacker in the class. Another thing is he's not overly a big hitter, big-time thumper against the run, which I guess some teams could hold against him in terms of viewing him as a complete linebacker, viewing him as a first-round prospect. Pro comparison for me, I see a lot of Jordan Hicks's game in this. I mean, Jordan Hicks is kind of a bigger hitter than Mack Wilson, but from a cover standpoint, from a sideline-to-sideline standpoint, from a body type standpoint, and a little bit from a technique standpoint, it was probably the easiest comparison to make for Mack Wilson. And obviously, as an Eagle fan, I see a whole lot of Jordan Hicks. And unfortunately for Jordan Hicks, I think his career has been marred a little bit by injuries. And if he has been able to stay healthy, a lot more people would know just how talented he is. So I think Mack Wilson should probably go in the first round. I personally have a late first to mid second round grade on him. And then finishing up at number 1, we have Devin White, 6'1", 235 pounds, out of LSU. In 2018, he had 123 tackles, 12 tackles for losses, 3 sacks, 6 pass breakups, and 3 forced fumbles. Look at the positives for Devin White. He is a great athlete. He is jacked to the gills, looks like a goddamn bodybuilder, and he has elite sideline-to-sideline skill. If you want to bring him on a blitz, he's just gonna dominate whatever gap, A gap, B gap, don't matter. He is gonna thump whoever is in there. He's just your old school type linebacker, kind of like Vosean Joseph a little bit. He's a 2018 National Football League linebacker. He's almost prototype. If he was a little bit better in coverage, he would be prototype to the T, right up there with, like, you know, Roquan Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. I think he's just below that. But he has that mentality that I don't necessarily think of Roquan or Leighton Vander Esch has. Devin White has that old school mentality that usually you find in the big thumpers, the 6'4", 230-pound linebackers ready to go, you know, later in the draft just because they have those athletic limitations. Devin White does not have that. He is going to be very, very good. I'm not going to say I don't think. I'm not going to gamble that he will test better than some of those elite linebackers that went last year, but he should be right there with them. The negatives for Devin White is his coverage isn't great. It just isn't, you know, exactly what you would want, what you would desire if you're building the perfect linebacking prospect, but it's still fine, and he can at times be overly aggressive, jump the play and kind of get caught out of position. But again, all these things will be and can be refined once he gets to the National Football League with a good DC. I think he is going to be the best linebacker in the class. Personally, I've had him. I started him as a top 5 talent entering the season. I've kind of less that. He's definitely in the top 15, maybe top 10. My pro comparison for him is Deion Jones. Obviously, Deion Jones is probably definitely better at coverage. Deion Jones is definitely one of the better cover linebackers. But from a sideline-to-sideline standpoint and from a play style standpoint, it's very, very similar comparing the two LSU linebackers. And I think Devin White has a very high ceiling. And for that, I think he is a bona fide first-round pick, no matter what way you look at it. Personally, I would put a top 15 grade on him. So there you go, guys. Those are my linebacker rankings for the 2019 draft. As always, if you agree or disagree with any of the rankings you decided today, let me know in the comment section below if I maybe missed a prospect or I'm sleeping on someone. Always like hearing your guys' feedback. If it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. We still are going to talk about corners. We're still going to talk about safeties. And then from that, we're going to be going into our full 32-team 7-round mock drafts as we preview the NFL draft here on the channel. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, subscribe if you're new, smash the like button if you enjoyed, and until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.